I'm standing in front of a locked gate with two sheriff's deputies watching, and Brenda Whitmore, HOA president, who's called 911 on me 3 times this week, is screaming that I'm trespassing on her community's private road. Her face is red, her finger is pointed at my chest. She's telling the deputies I need to be arrested immediately. I let her finish. Then I pull out my phone, open the county recorder app, and turn the screen toward her. "Ma'am," I say, keeping my voice level, "you just installed a padlock on my road. This entire valley? I own it. All 1,200 acres, including the dirt your $800,000 house sits on. And by the way, I also own the water source your entire subdivision runs on." The color drains from her face like someone pulled a plug. Both deputies take a half step back. One of them clears his throat and suddenly finds his boots very interesting. I let the moment breathe, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up 3 months and show you how a simple plan to restore my grandfather's cabin turned into a masterclass in what happens when a Karen picks a fight with the wrong property owner. You're probably wondering how someone just owns a valley. Well, it starts with my grandfather, a handshake deal that went bad, and an HOA president who really should have done a title search before installing that gate. My grandfather, everyone called him Pop, homesteaded this valley in 1952. 1,200 acres of Colorado mountain pine, a spring-fed creek, and silence so deep you could hear your own heartbeat. He filed his claim with the federal government, built a cabin with his own hands, and raised my mom there. No electricity until 1973, no phone line until 86. Just Pop, the mountains, and a work ethic that would make a mule look lazy. I spent every summer there from age 6 to 18. Pop taught me to fish that creek, identify animal tracks, and stack firewood so tight a chipmunk couldn't squeeze through. The cabin smelled like pine sap and coffee. The porch faced east, so you could watch the sunrise turn the valley gold. It was the closest thing to magic I've ever known. Then 1989 happened. Pop was 73, needed money for medical bills, and a developer named Robert Castellano came knocking. Castellano wanted to build homes. Pop didn't want a subdivision in his valley, but he was practical. They made a deal. Pop would sell 45 acres, just the flat meadow land at the lower end of the valley. Castellano could build his houses there, but Pop had conditions. "You can have that meadow," Pop told him, "but the road stays mine. The spring stays mine, and you leave the upper valley alone." Castellano agreed. They signed papers. The deal was clean. By 1994, 6 homes sat on that meadow. Nice families. Pop got along with everyone. He'd wave when they drove past his gate, sometimes share venison during hunting season. It worked. Then 2010 hit. Pop died. Heart attack, quick and clean, the way he'd have wanted. I inherited everything. The cabin, the land, all 1,200 acres minus those 45 he'd sold. But I was deep in my tech career in Seattle, building cybersecurity systems, pulling 80-hour weeks. The cabin sat empty. I paid property taxes every year, but I didn't visit. 15 years went by like that. 15 years of letting Pop's legacy gather dust. This year, 2025, I burned out. Staring at code until 2 a.m., living on energy drinks and imposter syndrome, I realized I was 30 miles deep into a life I didn't recognize. I needed out. That's when I remembered the cabin. I could work remotely, restore the place, breathe air that didn't taste like recycling. So I called the county in April to ask about building permits for repairs. The clerk was friendly. "Oh, you mean that old place up in Pine Ridge Estates?" I paused. "Pine Ridge what now?" Turns out, while I was gone, the subdivision expanded. That original developer retired to Arizona in 2015. A new builder bought the land, added 34 more homes between 2018 and 2020, 40 houses total now, and they'd formed an HOA. I got a voicemail that same day, professional tone, polite but firm. "This is Brenda Whitmore, president of Pine Ridge Estates HOA. We're concerned about the abandoned structure at the upper end of our community. We need to discuss community standards. Please call me back." I didn't think much of it. I figured I'd show up, introduce myself, maybe bring cookies for the neighbors. Be a good guy. Yeah, that's not what happened. Let me tell you what I didn't know then. While I was in Seattle writing code, Brenda Whitmore had built herself a little empire. She'd volunteered as HOA president when the new phase launched in 2018, ran unopposed. Within a year, she'd registered a property management LLC, her own company, and convinced the board to hire her at $3,000 a month to manage community affairs. She wasn't just the HOA president, she was collecting a paycheck from every homeowner in that subdivision. $3,600 a year per household in HOA dues, and a chunk of that went straight into her pocket. She had a vested interest in control, and control meant making sure everyone played by her rules, rules she'd written, rules she enforced, rules that, as I'd soon discover, she'd just made up as she went along. The other thing I didn't know? Brenda's husband, Roger, had been a county planning commissioner until 2019. He'd voted to approve that second phase of Pine Ridge Estates back in 2017, the expansion that turned 6 homes into 40. At the time, Brenda's LLC was already registered. She'd already signed a preliminary management agreement with the developer. Roger never disclosed that on his ethics form. When someone finally noticed, he retired rather than face a hearing. So Brenda was protective of her territory, and I was about to walk right into it, holding a set of property documents she had no idea existed. I arrived at the valley entrance on a Saturday morning in late April. 72 degrees, bluebird sky, the kind of day Pop used to call God showing off. I'd driven 6 hours from Seattle with my truck loaded, tools, camping gear, a month's worth of groceries. I was ready. The first thing I noticed was new. 2 stone pillars flanked the road entrance, each about 8 feet tall, with a wrought iron sign stretched between them. Pine Ridge Estates, private community. I slowed down. That sign hadn't been there on Google Street View. I kept driving. The road looked good, recently graded, fresh gravel. Someone had been maintaining it. About a quarter-mile in, I hit the problem. A chain-link gate stretched across the entire road, 10 feet wide, 8 feet tall, industrial grade with a keypad lock and a camera mounted on top. A sign, residents only, access code required. No warning, no alternate route, just a gate blocking what used to be open road. I parked, got out, looked at the keypad. There was a phone number on a laminated card zip-tied to the fence. For access, call HOA office. I called, got voicemail, left a polite message explaining I owned property up the valley and needed the gate code. Then I waited. 45 minutes in my truck, windows down, listening to the creek. I couldn't quite see through the trees. Nothing. I tried calling again. Voicemail. I pulled up Google Maps, looking for an alternate route. There wasn't one. The valley's a box canyon, mountains on 3 sides. This road the only vehicle access. I could hike around the gate, but my truck wasn't getting through. I grabbed my backpack, locked the truck, and started walking around the gate. I got maybe 200 yards when I heard the engine. A black SUV came roaring up the road from inside the subdivision, spraying gravel. It skidded to a stop. The driver's door flew open. Out stepped a woman in her late 50s, blonde highlights, white capris, tennis shoes that had never seen a trail. She was already holding up her phone, recording. "Sir," she said, voice sharp as a box cutter, "you are trespassing on private property. I've called the sheriff." That was my introduction to Brenda Whitmore. I tried explaining. "Ma'am, I own the cabin about 2 miles up this road. I've been trying to call the HOA office for the gate code." She cut me off. "There are no legal residences above the subdivision. That structure was condemned by the county." I blinked. Condemned? By who? "This is a gated community. You need to leave immediately or you'll be arrested for trespassing." Her phone was still recording. I stayed calm. Years of dealing with hostile IT managers had taught me to never escalate when someone's recording you. "I have documentation that I own property here. I'm happy to wait for the sheriff and sort this out." She didn't lower the phone. 20 minutes later, Deputy Jackson Hayes arrived. Young guy, maybe mid-30s, new enough that his uniform still had crisp creases. He took statements from both of us. I showed him everything I had on my phone, photos of the cabin from my last visit in 2010, a letter from my grandfather's estate attorney, property tax records showing continuous payment. Brenda showed him nothing but her recording and a lot of attitude. Deputy Hayes looked at my documents, looked at Brenda, looked back at me. "Ma'am," he said to Brenda, "he's got documentation showing property ownership. That's not trespassing. This is a civil property dispute, not a criminal matter." "The HOA owns this road," Brenda said. "He can't just—" "That's exactly what makes it civil," Deputy Hayes said. "You need to either give him access or take it to court. I'm not arresting anyone for a property line disagreement." Brenda's jaw clenched, but she pulled out her phone, tapped in the gate code, 742968. I memorized it, and the gate swung open. "This isn't over," she said as I walked past. I got back in my truck, drove up to the cabin. It was worse than I'd expected. Windows broken, mice had nested in the kitchen cabinets, the roof leaked in 2 spots, but the structure was sound. Pop built things to last. I spent the weekend cleaning, documenting damage, taking photos for insurance. And that's when I found it. In the closet, behind a false panel Pop had installed, there was a small fireproof safe. The combination was my birth year. Inside, everything I needed. The safe contained a stack of documents in a manila folder, each one in a plastic sleeve. On top, a post-it note in Pop's handwriting. Mark, if anyone gives you trouble about the road, this box has everything you need. Love, Pop. I photographed every page and uploaded them to 3 different cloud storage services. Cybersecurity paranoia pays off. Here's what I found. First, the original 1952 land patent, federal government to James Holloway. 1,200 acres, clear title, fee, simple, absolute. That's fancy lawyer talk for you own it, period, no strings attached. Second, survey maps from 1989 showing the exact boundaries of the 45 acres Pop sold to Castellano. I pulled out my phone, overlaid them on Google Maps. The subdivision sat entirely within that 45-acre parcel. Everything else, the upper valley, the road, the spring, still belonged to Pop's estate, which meant it belonged to me. Third, the purchase agreement from that '89 sale. I read it 3 times. There was a clause highlighted in yellow. Buyer acknowledges seller retains ownership and control of all access roads, trails, and infrastructure outside platted lots. Access rights granted via easement subject to annual maintenance fee of $1,000, escalating 3% annually, payable to seller by January 15th each year. I did the math. From 2010, when Pop died, to 2025, that's 15 years of unpaid fees. At 3% compound escalation, the developer owed Pop's estate roughly $47,000, and the agreement said if fees went unpaid for more than 1 year, the easement terminated. The developer had defaulted. The HOA had no easement. They'd been using my road without permission for 15 years. Fourth, a water rights certificate from 1968. Pop had filed for the spring that fed the creek. In Colorado, water rights work on first in time, first in right. Pop's claim predated the subdivision by 50 years. I owned the water source. I sat on the cabin floor, documents spread around me like puzzle pieces, and I started laughing. It wasn't a nice laugh. Monday morning, I called my mom's old college roommate, Sylvia Chen. She's a real estate attorney in Denver, specializes in property disputes. I sent her photos of everything. She called me back 2 hours later. Marcus, she said, and I could hear the grin in her voice. Do you understand what you have here? I think so. That old rancher just handed you a nuclear option. They've been trespassing on your property for 15 years. They owe you 47 grand, and you control their water supply. This isn't a property dispute. This is checkmate. What do I do? We file a formal notice with the county recorder, documenting your ownership and the easement default. We send certified copies to the HOA and Brenda personally. We give them 72 hours to remove any obstructions from your property, and then if they don't, you take your bolt cutters and remind them who owns that road. Wednesday morning, Sylvia filed the paperwork. Thursday, the certified letters went out. I spent the weekend walking the property with Ray Thornton, the surveyor who'd worked with Pop back in the 90s. Ray was in his 60s now, retired, but he remembered every boundary marker. Your Pop was a good man, Ray said as we hiked. Brenda's been making life hell for everyone. Let's nail this down. We found the original survey monuments, photographed them, documented everything. Monday morning, 72 hours after our notice, the gate was still there. So I drove down with Ray filming, read a prepared statement aloud, identifying myself as the property owner, and cut that chain with the biggest bolt cutters Home Depot sells. Click, clack, the chain hit the dirt. I dragged the gate to the side of the road and posted new signs. Private road, easement access by permission only, owner M. Holloway. My phone rang within 10 minutes. It wasn't Brenda calling. It was her attorney, Mitchell Barnes, semi-retired guy who usually does wills and trusts in way over his head. Mr. Holloway, I represent the Pine Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. You've destroyed HOA property, and we're filing an emergency restraining order. You'll be served tomorrow. I stayed calm. Mr. Barnes, I didn't destroy HOA property. I removed an obstruction from my private property. Your client installed a gate without my permission. I have documentation proving ownership. Your client has no recorded easement. We'll see what the judge says. He hung up. That evening, a FedEx truck delivered the lawsuit. Emergency hearing scheduled for Friday morning. Brenda was asking the court to bar me from the road pending a full trial, claiming I was threatening community safety, and that my removal of the gate was destruction of property. The filing included affidavits from 8 homeowners claiming they felt fear and harassment from my presence. I'd met exactly 0 of these people. Tuesday morning, I got another visitor. Dale Morrison, County Code Enforcement Officer, apologetic guy, probably 50, with a clipboard and a tired expression. Got a complaint about an unpermitted structure. He looked around the cabin. This place was built in 1954, I said. It's grandfathered under every code that exists. Dale walked the perimeter, checked the foundation, looked at the roof. Yeah, this is clearly legal construction. Someone's wasting my time. Out of curiosity, who filed the complaint? He glanced at his clipboard. Can't officially say, but the form came in on HOA letterhead. Noted. Dale handed me his card. If they keep filing bogus complaints, let me know. We take false reporting seriously. After he left, I drove to Denver to meet Sylvia in person. She'd already reviewed the lawsuit. She was laughing. Marcus, this is amateur hour. She doesn't even allege she owns the gate. She just says the HOA installed it for community safety. That's not a legal basis for anything. So what do? We file a counter motion. We ask the court for declaratory judgment. Basically, we want the judge to formally declare who owns what. And we compile every piece of evidence showing your ownership. We spent all afternoon preparing. Meanwhile, Brenda was busy. Tuesday night, she called an emergency HOA board meeting. I didn't know about this until later, but here's what happened. She pushed through a special assessment, $5,000 per household to fund the lawsuit. Several board members were uncomfortable, but Brenda steamrolled them. One guy, Thomas, a retired teacher, voted no. He asked for more information about the property dispute. Brenda shut him down. Do you want property values to collapse because some squatter is camping in the woods? Thomas sat down, but he didn't forget. Wednesday morning, I was back at the cabin doing repairs when I heard a vehicle coming up the road. A silver Honda pulled up. Out stepped Thomas. Mid-60s, glasses, cardigan. He looked nervous. Mr. Holloway, I'm Thomas Chen. I'm on the HOA board. Can we talk? Sure. We sat on the porch. Thomas pulled out a folder. I didn't know about any of this until last week. Most of us didn't. Brenda told us the road was county maintained, that we just needed the HOA to manage the internal streets. He showed me documents. After that meeting, I pulled the county GIS records. This road isn't on any county map. We've been lied to. I'm not trying to hurt anyone, I said. I just want to live here peacefully. I believe you. But Brenda just charged everyone $5,000 to fight you. A lot of families can't afford that. This is her personal vendetta, and we're paying for it. What do you want from me? I want the truth. What's the legal situation actually look like? I showed him everything. The land patent, the survey maps, the defaulted easement, the water rights certificate. Thomas went pale. She told us we owned the road. You don't. You never did. The HOA was formed in 2018. My grandfather died in 2010. There's an 8-year gap where nobody paid the easement fees. The easement terminated by default. What happens now? Friday, we go to court. If Brenda can't prove ownership or easement rights, the judge dismisses her restraining order. Then we negotiate. I'm willing to grant a new easement, but the HOA needs to acknowledge my ownership and pay the back fees. Thomas nodded slowly. That sounds fair. Can I testify if needed? Talk to your own lawyer first. But yeah, if you're willing, that'd help. He left. That night, the harassment got petty. Someone, I'm guessing Brenda, called the sheriff's department claiming my truck was an abandoned vehicle on the road. Deputy Hayes showed up for the 3rd time that week. He looked exhausted. Marcus, I'm sorry. She's calling every day. I've documented all of this as harassment of you, not the other way around. I appreciate that. Off the record? Her husband used to be county planning commissioner. She's used to getting her way, but he retired under pressure a few years ago. Some ethics thing. Ethics thing? You didn't hear it from me. He left. I set up trail cameras around the cabin that night. Cybersecurity paranoia again. First night of footage, deer, raccoons, and at 2 a.m., Brenda's black SUV driving slowly past the cabin turnoff, then turning around. I texted the footage to Sylvia. Is this creepy or just me? She replied, That's called surveillance. Save everything. She's building a case that you're dangerous. Let her build one that she's unhinged. Friday morning, we walked into Larkspur County Courthouse ready for a fight. Judge Sandra Portman presiding. 30 years on the bench, silver hair pulled back tight, reading glasses on a chain. No-nonsense energy from the moment she walked in. Brenda sat at the plaintiff's table with Mitchell Barnes. I sat with Sylvia. We had 3 bankers' boxes of evidence. Judge Portman looked at Brenda's filing, then at us, then back at Brenda. Miss Whitmore, I've reviewed your emergency motion. You're seeking to bar Mr. Holloway from a road you claim is HOA property. Do you have a deed showing ownership? Barnes stood. Your Honor, the road is within the community boundaries and has been maintained by the HOA for several years. We're relying on implied easement and prescriptive use. Counselor, Judge Portman said, not looking up from the file, that's not what I asked. Do you have a deed or recorded easement agreement? Barnes shuffled papers. We're claiming rights based on continuous use, and so that's a no. Awkward silence. Sylvia stood. Your Honor, we have the recorded deed showing Mr. Holloway owns the access road. We have the 1989 subdivision agreement showing only 45 acres were sold. We have survey maps confirming boundaries. And we have the easement agreement showing it terminated due to non-payment in 2011. She laid out the documents like playing cards. Judge Portman spent 5 minutes reviewing them. You could hear people breathing. Finally, Mr. Barnes, based on preliminary review, Mr. Holloway appears to have superior claim to road ownership. Do you have any documentation showing HOA ownership or valid easement rights? Brenda whispered urgently to Barnes. He cleared his throat. Your Honor, we request a 2-week continuance to locate additional documentation. Judge Portman looked at him over her glasses. 2 weeks to find a deed you should have had before installing a gate? We believe there may be county records that I'm granting your continuance, but I'm denying the restraining order. Mr. Holloway may continue accessing his property without restriction. If you can't produce documentation at the next hearing, I'm dismissing this case and we'll discuss sanctions for frivolous litigation. Gavel. Done. In the courthouse parking lot, Brenda confronted me. Her face was red, hands shaking. You think you're so smart? You'll never win this. I know people. That cabin needs to go and you need to leave. Tell your attorney to call mine, I said. We can negotiate easement terms. I'm not negotiating anything. She got in her SUV and peeled out. That weekend, I noticed activity at the subdivision entrance. Saturday morning, a work crew arrived with equipment. They were installing a second gate, this one at the junction where the Valley Road met the county highway. The new gate was on the 45-acre subdivision parcel, technically on their property, but it also blocked my only access to the county road. I called Sylvia. Can she do this? That's more complicated. If the gate is on subdivision property and she's blocking through access, it depends whether your easement explicitly includes access to the highway. Let me check the 89 agreement. She called back an hour later. The original agreement gave the developer easement rights across the subdivision to reach the county highway, but it's not clear if that easement transferred to you as the remaining landowner. You might need to establish prescriptive easement based on 15+ years of continuous use. So legally murky. Exactly. This is her lawyer's advice. She can't block your road, so she's blocking the exit. It's a technical loophole. By Sunday, the second gate was finished. Heavy steel, keypad lock, camera, sign, private community, residents only, no through access. Monday morning, I drove down to test it. Locked. I called the HOA office. Receptionist sounded nervous. I'm sorry, Brenda said no access for non-residents. I'm not a resident. I'm the landowner of the Upper Valley. Open the gate or I'm cutting it. She said you'd threaten that. She's already called the sheriff. Deputy Hayes arrived. He looked more frustrated than I'd ever seen him. Marcus, do you have documented easement across their property to reach the highway? I've been using this road my entire life. My grandfather built it. But does it cross their recorded 45 acres? It's all one continuous road. I can't make a civil determination here, and I can't let you cut a gate on their recorded property without a court order. He radioed dispatch. This is a civil matter, no crime occurring. He left. I sat in my truck, stuck for the first time. Tuesday morning, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. I hiked down to investigate. A construction crew was digging a trench across the road, right at the edge of the subdivision property line. 6 feet deep, 10 feet wide, completely impassable. The foreman saw me. HOA hired us for emergency drainage work. Where's your permit? Lady said it was emergency. Permit's coming. I photographed everything, called Sylvia, called Dale Morrison. Dale arrived within an hour. He was pissed. They don't have a permit. Road work requires 72-hour notice and county approval. I'm issuing a stop work order right now. He handed the foreman a citation. Fill that trench back in or your company gets fined. But the damage was done. The road was impassable until they repaired it. I sat on a boulder looking at that trench and something Pop used to say came back to me. When someone tries to take your water, son, you've got him by the throat. And that's when I remembered. The spring. I hiked back up to the cabin and pulled out Pop's water rights certificate, 1968, senior priority status. In Colorado, water law is simple. First in time, first in right. Pop claimed that spring 50 years before the subdivision existed. I walked up to the spring house, a stone structure Pop built in the 60s to protect the source. Crystal clear water bubbling up from underground, flowing into a pipe that ran downhill. I followed the pipe. It fed directly into a holding tank at the edge of the subdivision. Their entire water system ran off my spring. I called Sylvia. What happens if I shut off their water? Long pause. Legally? You could. You own the source, you have senior rights. Practically? That's a nuclear option. Every resident would turn against you. You'd be the villain, and it'd drag out in court for years. I don't want to shut it off. I want them to know I could. That's called leverage. Use it carefully. Wednesday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Holloway? This is Teresa Ruiz. I'm a freelance journalist covering land use issues in Colorado. I saw your story on Reddit. I didn't post anything on Reddit. Someone did. You've got about 2,500 upvotes on our legal advice. People are tagging me because I wrote about HOA overreach last year. Can we talk? She drove up Thursday. Mid-40s, hiking boots, professional camera. We spent 3 hours going through everything. The documents, the timeline, the gates, the trench. She photographed the property, the survey maps, the water system. This is bigger than your personal dispute, she said. HOAs across Colorado are claiming authority over access roads they don't own. It's blocking historic trails, cutting off public land access, creating private fiefdoms. Your story illustrates the problem perfectly. What do you need from me? Full transparency. Documents, timeline, your side of the story. And I need to contact Brenda for comment. Fair warning, this will escalate things. At this point, sunlight is my best disinfectant. Teresa spent Friday interviewing people. Thomas talked to her. 2 other homeowners talked. They were angry about the $5,000 assessment, angry about being lied to about property ownership. Teresa also pulled public records on Roger Whitmore. Here's what she found. Roger voted to approve Pine Ridge Estates Phase 2 in 2017 while serving on the Planning Commission. His disclosure form listed no conflicts of interest, but Brenda's LLC was already registered in 2016. She'd already signed a preliminary property management agreement with the developer. That's textbook conflict of interest. When the County Ethics Board started investigating in 2019, Roger retired rather than face a hearing. Teresa's article published Friday afternoon. Mountain Land Weekly, online edition. Title: HOA President blocks landowner from his own property while profiting from management fees. Detailed breakdown of the ownership dispute, photos of the documents, survey maps, county records. A sidebar comparing HOA claims versus recorded deeds. The viral moment was a side-by-side image. Left side, Brenda's letter claiming HOA owns access road. Right side, county recorder screenshot showing Marcus Holloway as owner. Caption: one of these is recorded public record. The other is creative writing. 8,000 shares in 24 hours. Local Denver news stations called for interviews. Comments section exploded. This is why HOAs are tyranny. That Karen messed with the wrong guy. Someone check if she's related to my HOA president because this sounds identical. Friday evening I got an email from Sandra, the HOA vice president. Subject line: request for meeting. The email was brief. Mr. Holloway, several board members were unaware of the full situation regarding property ownership. We would like to request a meeting with you and Ms. Chen to discuss potential resolution. Brenda will not be present. Please advise your availability. CC'd to 5 other board members, 6 of 7 total, everyone except Brenda. Saturday morning, I met with the board at Thomas's house. 6 members present. Thomas, Sandra, and 4 others I'd never met. Everyone looked tired. Sandra spoke first. Mr. Holloway, we owe you an apology. Most of us didn't know Brenda had a financial stake in this. We thought we were protecting property values. She told us the road was county maintained and you were trying to claim it illegally. Thomas added, none of us knew about the water rights, or the original easement agreement, or that your grandfather only sold 45 acres. I looked around the room. These were normal people, retirees, families, folks who just wanted to live in the mountains. They weren't the enemy. Brenda was. Can you walk us through the actual legal situation? Sandra asked. Sylvia, on speakerphone, explained everything. The 1,200-acre land patent, the limited 45-acre sale, the easement that defaulted in 2011, the water rights that predated everything, the HOA's complete lack of legal claim to the road. You could watch their faces fall as she talked. What would a reasonable solution look like? Sandra asked. I'd thought about this. I want to restore my grandfather's cabin and live here peacefully. I don't want to hurt your property values or your quality of life. I'm willing to grant a formal easement for road access, but the HOA needs to acknowledge my ownership, pay the back fees, and we need a maintenance agreement that's fair to everyone. The back fees are $47,000, spread over 10 years, that's $4,700 a year. Split among 40 households, that's $118 per household per year, less than $10 a month. Thomas did the math on his phone. That's less than we pay Brenda's management company per month. Exactly. Sandra looked around the table. Can we make this happen? One of the other board members, a woman named Patricia, said, we'd need membership approval to negotiate, and we'd need to remove Brenda from the process. She's not going to go quietly, someone else said. No, Thomas agreed, but we have the votes. 6 of 7 board members want resolution, and after that article, I think the membership will support us. Sunday, the board called an emergency membership meeting for Tuesday night. Brenda got wind of it and sent an email blast to all residents. She claimed the board was caving to outsider pressure and that I was trying to steal our roads and water. She warned property values would collapse and called for a vote of no confidence in the current board. The community split. Maybe 12 to 15 households sided with Brenda, her friends, people who'd bought into her narrative. But most residents just wanted the fighting to stop. They were tired of assessments and lawsuits and drama. Monday morning, Brenda made her fatal mistake. Desperate, she filed a new lawsuit claiming I was operating an illegal commercial venture. Working remotely from the cabin meant home business meant zoning violation. She also filed a complaint with the county alleging I was running an unlicensed Airbnb. Complete fabrication. I wasn't renting anything. But here's the thing. In her filing, she included photographs. Photos of my truck, my cabin, my property, photos she'd taken while trespassing. She'd just admitted to criminal trespass in a court document. Sylvia spotted it immediately. She's done. We can file criminal charges and use her own evidence. Monday afternoon, Sylvia filed our motion for declaratory judgment in district court. We asked the judge to formally declare 1. Marcus owns 1,155 acres including the road. 2. The HOA has no easement due to default. 3. Marcus has the right to grant or deny access at his discretion. 4. The HOA owes $47,000 in back fees. We also filed a criminal trespass complaint against Brenda, citing her own photographs as evidence. Hand-delivered copies to Brenda, the HOA board, and the local newspaper. Tuesday evening, the HOA meeting. 7 p.m. at the clubhouse. 34 of 40 households represented. Huge turnout. Brenda tried to take control. Sandra cut her off. Brenda, you're removed as meeting chair due to conflict of interest. You can't do that. I'm president. We're invoking HOA Bylaws Section 8.3. The board can suspend an officer for fiduciary breach pending investigation. Thomas banged the gavel. Meeting proceeds without Brenda as chair. She may stay as a resident, but she doesn't run this meeting. Brenda sat down, furious. The board presented facts, survey maps, timeline, legal analysis. Thomas explained, we've been funding a lawsuit to defend property the HOA never owned. We've spent $67,000 in legal fees so far. Gasps around the room. $67,000 from our reserves and your special assessments. For this, I was invited to speak. I kept it simple. Explained my offer, permanent easement in exchange for acknowledgement of ownership, back fees over 10 years, and joint maintenance. Alternative, I revoke all access. You sue for easement by necessity. We fight in court for 3 to 5 years. Cost you hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Maybe you win, maybe you don't. But it'll be expensive and ugly. Someone asked, what about the water? Water access is included in the easement. I'm not cutting anyone off. I just want to live here. Relief rippled through the room. Motion. Authorize board to negotiate settlement with Marcus Holloway per proposed terms. Vote 29 in favor, 4 against, 1 abstention. Brenda and Roger voted against. Brenda stood up, shouting, this is insane. He's blackmailing you. I'm not letting this stand. Sandra, calm. Brenda, you're outvoted. The membership has spoken. Brenda stormed out. You'll all regret this. Settlement negotiations took a week. Sylvia and a competent HOA attorney drafted the agreement. Terms. Marcus grants perpetual easement to HOA residents for road access. HOA pays $47,000 in back fees over 10 years, starting June 1st. Road maintenance split 60-40 HOA to Marcus. Marcus retains right to grant guest access codes. All gates removed except optional gate at Marcus's cabin entrance. HOA acknowledges Marcus owns the valley and water rights. Mutual release of all claims. There was one unusual clause Sylvia suggested. The HOA had to install a historical marker at the valley entrance. Text, Holloway Valley, ested 1952, homesteaded by James Pop Holloway, protected for future generations. Cost split 50-50. The board approved unanimously. Brenda, no longer chairing anything, didn't attend the vote. Monday, June 2nd, formal signing ceremony at the courthouse. Judge Portman's courtroom, 10 a.m. Present, me, Sylvia, 6 board members, the new HOA attorney. Notably absent, Brenda. Invited but declined. Judge Portman reviewed the settlement. This is how property disputes should be resolved, through negotiation, not endless litigation. Mr. Holloway, your willingness to compromise is commendable. You could have made life very difficult for these families. She looked at the board. You've learned an expensive lesson about verifying property rights before making claims. I hope it sticks. Everyone signed. Judge entered the consent decree, making it an official court order. Media was there. Teresa covering it, 2 local news cameras. Post-signing, a reporter asked, Mr. Holloway, you could have shut off their water. Why didn't you? Because that's not who my grandfather was, and it's not who I am. He believed in being a good neighbor even when others weren't good to him. Any message for Miss Whitmore? I hope she finds peace. Anger is exhausting. The story could have ended there, but Tuesday afternoon, I was at the cabin working on roof repairs when I heard a vehicle. Brenda's black SUV. I stepped outside, wary. She got out. She looked different, smaller somehow, defeated. I need to say something, she said. Okay, I'm listening. She took a breath. I didn't know. When I became HOA president, the developer told me the road was ours. I believed it. Then when you showed up with documents, I looked like an idiot. I'd told everyone I was protecting them. You could have just talked to me. I know that now. But I needed to be right. I've spent my whole life being the person who fixes things, who's in charge. Roger lost his position on the commission over that ethics thing. Being HOA president was my thing, you know, my identity. I could see it clearly now. Not evil, just proud, scared of losing status. I'm sorry, she said. For the cops, the gates, all of it. I know sorry doesn't fix it. No, but it's a start. What are you going to do now? We're selling the house, moving to Utah, closer to our daughter. Roger needs a fresh start. So do I. I hope it works out. She paused. For what it's worth, your grandfather would be proud. Not of the fighting, but of how you ended it. You didn't destroy us. You could have... She got back in her SUV and drove away. I stood there processing. Not triumphant, just done. Friday, June 6th. The historical marker installation ceremony. The HOA organized it as a community event. Barbecue, families, kids running around. 35-plus residents attended. Local news covered the positive angle. Community comes together after property dispute. I gave a short speech, kept it simple. My grandfather homesteaded this valley in 1952 because he fell in love with these mountains. He built that cabin with his own hands, raised my mom here, taught me to fish in that creek. When he sold land in '89, he didn't do it just for money, though he needed it. He did it because he believed in sharing this place. He just wanted to make sure it stayed wild and beautiful. I'm not interested in being your landlord or your enemy. I'm just a guy who wants to honor his grandfather's legacy and maybe make this valley even better for the next generation. So here's what I'm proposing. I announced 3 initiatives. First, conservation easement. I'm placing 800 acres, the upper valley, away from the subdivision under permanent conservation easement with Colorado open lands. I retain ownership, but the land can never be subdivided or developed. Protected wildlife corridor, preserved habitat, forever. Second, public hiking trail, 3.2 miles from the subdivision to the mountain ridge, non-motorized, foot traffic only. Open to HOA residents and the general public via permit system. The trail crosses my property but uses an existing path Pop created. Third, the Pop Holloway Memorial Scholarship, $5,000 annually for a Larkspur County graduating senior. Essay topic, conservation and property stewardship. I'm funding the first 5 years personally, then hoping for community donations. The crowd was silent, then applause. Thomas approached afterward. You didn't have to do any of this. Pop used to say the land doesn't belong to us. We just borrow it from our grandkids. I'm making sure they can borrow it too. The following week, media coverage exploded. Teresa's follow-up article, From Property War to Conservation Win. Denver Post picked it up. How one man turned an HOA dispute into a community asset. Regional outdoor groups praised the conservation easement. Colorado Open Lands issued a statement thanking me. The story got shared 50,000 times on social media. Comments, this is how you win. He could have crushed them and chose to build instead. Forget revenge. This guy created a legacy. 3 other Colorado landowners contacted me through Teresa. Similar situations, HOAs, claiming private roads and trails. I connected them with Sylvia. A small movement started. Verify before you buy, HOA property rights checklist. State legislators took notice. By late June, there was talk of a bill requiring HOAs to disclose property boundaries and easement status to homebuyers. One afternoon, Sandra's grandson Tyler, maybe 8 years old, came up to the cabin with his grandma. "Mr. Holloway, can I see the spring house? I'm doing a school project on local history." "Absolutely. Want me to show you how Pop built it?" His face lit up. "Really? That's so cool." We walked up together, me telling stories about Pop mixing concrete by hand, laying stones, engineering the outflow. Tyler took notes in a little notebook. Sandra smiled. "6 months ago, if you told me we'd be taking family history tours on your property, I'd have said you were crazy. Pop always said the best revenge is building something that outlasts your enemies. Brenda's not your enemy anymore. No, she's just someone who made mistakes, like all of us." We stood at the spring house watching clear water bubble up from the earth, the same water Pop had claimed 57 years ago, the same water that would flow long after all of us were gone. Tyler asked, "Why'd your grandfather protect this place?" "Because some things are bigger than ownership. Some things you're supposed to take care of, not just take key." Late June evening on the cabin porch, sun setting over the ridge, turning the valley gold. My phone buzzed. Email from the first scholarship recipient. Jasmine, high school senior, wants to study environmental science. Her essay mentioned Pop's story, talked about stewardship and conservation legacy. I read it twice, eyes blurring. Pop would have loved her, would have loved knowing his valley inspired someone to protect other places. I thought about Brenda's last words. Your grandfather would be proud. Maybe, not of the fighting, not of the lawsuits or the gates or the conflict, but of this, the protected land, the scholarship, the community that came together after almost being torn apart, the legacy that kept building. I opened a beer, one of Pop's favorites, a local Colorado brew, and toasted the empty chair next to me. "We did it, Pop. Your valley's safe, forever." The conservation easement paperwork finalized on July 15th. I met with the director of Colorado Open Lands at the Spring House. She was in her 50s, gray hair in a braid, boots worn from years of trail work. "This is exactly the kind of private conservation we need," she said, reviewing the boundaries on her tablet. 800 acres of contiguous habitat protecting a wildlife corridor between 2 wilderness areas. You're setting an example. Pop was doing conservation before it had a fancy name. He just called it taking care of the land. The easement allows one single-family dwelling, your cabin, agricultural use, forestry, and recreation. No subdivision, no commercial development, no mining. Even after you're gone, even if this property changes hands, these protections stay forever. Forever, that word hit different now. Pop's cabin would stand, the valley would remain wild. The spring would keep flowing. Long after I was dust, long after everyone in that subdivision was gone, this place would still be here, protected by paperwork and principle. "There's one more thing," I said. "I want to establish public access days, maybe 4 times a year, guided hikes for school groups or families, educational stuff. Teach kids about conservation, water rights, why protecting land matters." She smiled. "We can coordinate that through our volunteer program. You'd be surprised how many people want to learn." By August, the trail was nearly complete. HOA volunteers helped clear brush, install signage. The route followed game trails where possible, minimizing impact. Simple wooden markers every quarter mile. Ray came up to survey the final route, certify it met county requirements for public access. "Your grandfather would get a kick out of this," Ray said as we walked. "He spent years keeping people out, and here you are inviting them in." Different times, Pop needed solitude, but the world needs wild places now more than people need private kingdoms. The trail opening was scheduled for September 20th. Local hiking clubs already expressing interest. The county tourism board wanted to feature it on their website. "First legal public access to this ridge in 40 years" became the tagline. Property values in Pine Ridge Estates increased 8% between June and September. Realtors started marketing homes as adjacent to 800-acre conservation area with trail access. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Brenda had fought to protect property values by keeping me out. The thing that actually increased values? Letting the valley be protected and shared. Sandra emailed me the market analysis with a note. Turns out protecting the valley was good for everyone. Who knew? I printed the article, hung it in the cabin with a caption, "Brenda was right about property values, she just didn't know how." July bled into August. I settled into a rhythm at the cabin. Remote work in the mornings, cybersecurity consulting, teaching companies how to not get hacked. Afternoons hiking, fixing up the property, learning to live at Pop's pace instead of Seattle's. Thomas stopped by weekly to help with repairs. Genuine friendship forming. We rebuilt the porch railing together, replaced rotted deck boards, rehung the door that had been sticking since 2008. Deputy Hayes came by off duty one Saturday. "Just wanted to see how you're doing, and yeah, okay, I heard the fishing's good here." I took him up to the creek. We caught 4 rainbow trout, threw them all back. He told stories about growing up in rural Montana, why he became a cop, how refreshing it was to see a dispute end in handshakes instead of handcuffs. "You handled that whole thing right," he said. "A lot of guys would have gone scorched earth. You built a bridge instead." Pop used to say you can't live in a place you've burned down. The scholarship fund grew beyond my initial investment. Local businesses chipped in matching donations. By mid-August, the first year's fund hit $12,000. The school district superintendent called personally. "Mr. Holloway, this is remarkable. Most scholarships are $200, maybe $500. $5,000 is life-changing for these kids. Pop never got to go to college. Now he's sending kids there. That's the win." September 20th arrived, trail opening day, ribbon-cutting ceremony at the valley entrance, under the historical marker. 100+ people showed up. HOA residents, hikers, county commissioners, school district reps, Colorado Open Land staff, reporters. I gave the first family their trail map. Dad, mom, 2 kids maybe 6 and 9. The father shook my hand. "My family's lived in this county 30 years. We've never had legal access to this ridge. This means everything. Enjoy it. Respect it. Bring your grandkids someday." I watched them head up the trail, kids racing ahead, parents laughing. That image, that moment, felt more like victory than anything that happened in a courtroom. Thomas approached with a group of residents. "We wanted to say thank you for not making us the villains in your story." "You were never the villains. You were just people who got bad information from someone who needed to be right more than she needed to be truthful." Sandra added, "The board voted last week. We're putting the first 5 years of scholarship matching funds in the HOA budget. $250 per household, voluntary opt-in. We got 38 of 40 households participating. I did the math. 38 times 250 times 5 years. $47,500. The exact amount they owed me in back easement fees, coming back as scholarship funding. That's full circle," I said. "That's community," Sandra replied. Late September, first scholarship essays came in. 53 applications. Kids writing about conservation, stewardship, what it means to protect something for people you'll never meet. I read every single one. Cried reading about half of them. Jasmine's essay stood out. She wrote about growing up poor in Larkspur County, watching wealthy people buy up land and gate it off, feeling like the mountains were being stolen from people like her. Then she wrote about Pop's story, about a man who shared his land even when he didn't have to, about a grandson who could have taken revenge but chose legacy instead. Mr. Holloway showed me that property ownership isn't about keeping people out. It's about protecting something so valuable that you invite people in to appreciate it. That's the kind of environmental scientist I want to be. The scholarship ceremony was October 3rd, high school auditorium. I presented Jasmine with the check. $5,000 plus the community matching funds, $7,500 total. She hugged me, crying. Her mom hugged me, crying. I barely held it together. "Pop would have loved you," I told her. "You get it, that's what matters." After the ceremony, I drove back up to the valley, stopped at Pop's grave in the small county cemetery. I'd visited a few times over the summer, clearing weeds, leaving flowers. I sat on the grass next to his headstone. "Hey, Pop, figured you'd want an update. Valley's protected. 800 acres, conservation easement forever. Nobody can subdivide it or pave it or wreck it. Your spring's still flowing. The cabin's solid. Fixed the roof, replaced the boards you always meant to get around to. Started a scholarship in your name. First kid just got $7,500 to study environmental science. She's brilliant. You'd like her." The HOA situation worked out. We negotiated. They're good people now that Brenda's gone. Trail's open. Families are using it. Kids are learning why places like this matter. I think you'd be proud. Not of the fighting. I know you hated conflict, but of how it ended. We built something, Pop. Something that'll outlast both of us. Wind moved through the pines. Sounded almost like an answer. I drove back to the cabin as the sun set, painting the valley in gold and purple. Home, finally. October, 6 months after that first locked gate. I'm sitting on the cabin porch with morning coffee, watching mist rise off the creek. My phone buzzes. Email from Teresa. She's forwarding a letter that came to her office, addressed to me. It's from Brenda, postmarked Utah. Short note, saw the news about the scholarship. That's a good thing you're doing. I'm sorry I made it harder than it needed to be. I hope the Valley treats you well. B. I don't respond. But I keep the letter, not for forgiveness. Just closure. If you're dealing with an HOA, a Karen neighbor, or anyone who thinks their authority trumps your rights, here's what I learned. First, document everything. Every email, every conversation, every threat. Obsessively. Second, know what you actually own. Get a survey. Get a title report. Don't assume anything. Third, find good people. Sylvia, Ray, Deputy Hayes, Thomas. I couldn't have done this without them. Fourth, play the long game. Brenda won some battles, but she lost the war because she fought with anger instead of strategy. And finally, when you win, build something. Don't just tear down your enemy. Create something they can't destroy. Pops Valley is protected now, forever. No matter who comes next, no matter what HOA tries what stunt, 800 acres are safe. That's a win. If this story resonated with you, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear that they don't have to roll over when authority overreaches. And if you've got your own property war story, or if you're in the middle of one, drop a comment. Let's build a community of people who know their rights and aren't afraid to use them. Thanks for listening. Now go check your property deed. Trust me,